We're here honoring Jimmy Carter, the former president who died yesterday at his Georgia home, surrounded by his family. It's hard to remember a time when he wasn't part of our national life. Our senior national correspondent, Steve Osunsami, is at the Carter Center in Atlanta, a major part of the former president's legacy. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning to you, Rebecca. The former president died Sunday afternoon, and as much as his family had been prepared for this moment, this is still a very difficult time, losing someone they have had to share with the world.
He'll always be the small-town man who would teach the world to remember his name.
My name is Jimmy Carter, and I'm running for president.
Jimmy Carter was a Georgia peanut farmer who never forgot where he came from. He was a man of the soil and of the New South who took on Washington.
I say to you quite frankly that the time for racial discrimination is over.
His road to the White House began in the small town of Plains. He graduated from the Naval Academy after running the family business, and then public service came calling. By 1970, Jimmy Carter was elected Georgia's governor, but he was still so unknown across the country that when he appeared on the popular game show What's My Line, no one knew who he was.
Is this anything to do with the world of fashion?
No. Two down, 8 to go down.
But come 1976, he was the Democratic nominee.
As a candidate and as a president, I'll never tell a lie.
After a White House that saw scandal from Richard Nixon and a controversial pardon from Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter was a new face that told voters it was time to turn the page.
ABC now projects Carter is the winner with 272 electoral votes.
And this farmer, James Earl Carter Jr., took the oath of office as Jimmy.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
On Inauguration Day, he and First Lady Rosalind, his partner in all things, left their limo and walked the parade.
And this is more like it was in the old days.
He pushed for human rights and foreign policy. And one of his biggest achievements in the White House was the historic peace agreement between Israel and Egypt, which still stands today.
There's the partnership.
But stateside, his presidency was a challenge. Rising inflation and gas lines as long as the eye can see, issues he tried to address in an infamous speech where he blamed some of the country's problems on the crisis of the spirit, a speech critics say helped spell the end of his success as a president.
It is a crisis that strikes at the very heart and soul and spirit of our national will.
After Iranian militants took hostages at the American embassy in Tehran, the president seemed powerless. An American rescue mission failed. Then, after 444 days, with Americans following every detail, the Iranians finally released the Americans. But it was on the day when Jimmy Carter left the White House. Our cameras were with him in those final hours as their release was becoming a reality.
Right on, man. That's great. That's great. I think that was the happiest day that I've ever had. Not in laying down the burdens of the presidency, which I did not want to do, but in just knowing that those hostages were free.
He was just 56 years old when he left the White House, unsure of the future.
We didn't know what we were going to do the rest of our lives, and we decided to take on projects that no one else wanted to do.
But instead of avoiding the spotlight, President Carter and his wife stepped right into it in a different way. They worked with Habitat for Humanity, building homes for the poor. And through the Carter Center, they traveled the world, helping nations end disease and monitor foreign elections. His work promoting human rights won him the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002.
We can choose to alleviate suffering. We can choose to work together for peace.
But no matter how far he traveled, his home was always his farm in Plains. Carter talked about spending more time there as he slowed down. In August of 2015, he shared with the world that he had cancer, melanoma, that had spread to his liver and brain.
I've had a wonderful life. I've had thousands of friends, and I've had an exciting and adventurous and gratifying existence. But now I feel, that it's in the hands of God, whom I worship, and I'll be prepared for anything that comes.
Suddenly, the lines grew longer outside his tiny Baptist church in Plains, Georgia, where Carter, as he had for decades, continued to teach Sunday school.
Students, yeah, disciples.
Then within months, the former president had beaten the odds. announcing he was cancer-free. Through it all, he would tell anyone that the best thing that ever happened to him was marrying his wife Rosalind in 1946.
When I first had a date with her, the next morning I told my mother that was the girl I wanted to marry.
They were married for 77 years until Rosalind's death in November of 2023.
There's no doubt in my mind that my love for her is stronger because we've been through so many things together.
Life with Jimmy Carter has been an adventure.
Overnight, President Biden spoke of remembering his dear friend.
Millions of people all around the world, all over the world, feel they lost a friend as well, even though they never met him. And that's because Jimmy Carter lived a life measured not by words, but by his deeds.
And President-elect Trump wrote that he did everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans. For that, we all owe him a debt of gratitude. Former President Barack Obama wrote that Carter taught all of us what it means to live a life of grace, dignity, justice, and service. From former President George W. Bush, Carter was loyal to his family, his community, and his country. And from the Clintons, he worked tirelessly for a better, fairer world. This was a president who may be best known for what he did after he left the Oval Office, for the lives he touched across the world and the love he shared at home that guided him.
Make a full life even more full.
Well, I think so. It's been the best part of my life since I left the White House. But I really have been both gratified and honored and pleased and excited to be the president of a great country.
President Jimmy Carter was 100 years old.
The family, the U.S. military, and the people here at the Carter Center are still working on funeral arrangements. There are plans that have actually been in the works for decades, but they're having to adjust them because of the New Year holiday. There will be a state funeral in Washington, D.C., and Jimmy Carter will be buried here in Georgia next to his wife. Gio.
A beautiful love story and a legacy of kindness, Steve. Thank you so much for that.